Faith. It doesn't always arrive with the peal of thunder or the blaze of light. Sometimes it's quiet, desperate. It's the last thing your fingers touch in the dark. It's what you do when you have absolutely nothing left to give. This is a story about that kind of faith. A story that began not with marble or precious cedar, but with a simple, almost absurd material, a bar of soap. And it's a story that proves, in ways no one could have foreseen, that when you reach out to her, even with hands that feel empty, she takes what little you have and turns it into a miracle. I want you to picture a man. Let's call him Matteo. He lives in a small, unnamed city. It could be yours, it could be mine, where the streets are familiar and everyone knows your business. Matteo was a craftsman, a woodcarver by trade. His hands were gifted. They could coax the face of a saint from a block of oak. He had a wife, Elena, and a little girl, Lucia, with eyes like dark, shining pools. Their life was simple, woven from the threads of routine, faith, and quiet love. Every Sunday, without fail, they were in the front pew of their parish church, dedicated to Our Lady of Sorrows. Matteo had a particular devotion to the Virgin. He'd carved the small statue of her that stood in their home prayer corner. Her expression one of tender compassion, her hands outstretched. Before we go any further, I need you to do something for me. Right now, pause this video. Type "hope" in the comments below and tell me what city you're watching from. Let's create a visible, global chain of faith. Let's show each other that we are all carving our prayers together from wherever we are. But then, the unthinkable. A storm of misfortune that seemed biblical in its ferocity. A fire sparked by faulty wiring swept through Matteo's workshop. In one night, his tools, his commissions, a lifetime's worth of carefully sourced wood, his livelihood, all reduced to ash and charcoal. The insurance, a policy he'd barely been able to afford, was riddled with clauses he didn't understand. The payout was a pittance. Within months, the savings evaporated. The medical bills began when Lucia developed a persistent, racking cough the doctors struggled to diagnose. The fear in Elena's eyes, once so bright, turned into a constant, weary shadow. Matteo took any job he could find, loading trucks, washing dishes, fixing fences. But it was never enough. The debt was a creature that grew in the dark, feeding on their sleepless nights. And then the final blow. The bank foreclosed on their home. The small, beloved house with Lucia's height marks penciled on the kitchen doorway, with the garden where Elena grew roses, was gone. They moved into a single damp room in a boarding house on the poor side of town. The air smelled of mildew and despair. Matteo's hands, once so skilled and sure, were now cracked and raw from menial labor. He felt his faith, not disappear, but retreat to a deep, frozen place inside him. He could still pray, but the words felt like stones dropping into a bottomless well, with no sound of a splash. He was angry. Not at God, not exactly. At the sheer, grinding weight of it all. At the feeling of being erased. One evening, after a day of digging ditches in the cold rain, he came home to their grim room. Elena was trying to soothe Lucia, whose cough had worsened into ragged, painful gasps. The single bulb overhead flickered. On the tiny table, next to a loaf of stale bread, was a bar of soap. It was cheap, coarse, a yellowish-white rectangle. Elena had been scrubbing their few clothes in the shared sink. Matteo picked it up. Felt insubstantial, useless. This was what his life had been whittled down to. A bar of soap in a rented room, with his family suffering around him. And then a thought came to him. Not a voice, not a vision, just a deep gut-level impulse. An almost childish memory. As a boy, he'd whittled sticks with his pocket knife. The soap was soft. His carving tools were gone, but he had a simple kitchen knife, a nail file. In that moment, carving wasn't about art or commerce. It was a scream, a physical prayer when verbal prayer had failed. If he could not build a shelter for his family, if he could not heal his daughter, he would do the only thing his soul remembered how to do. He would make something beautiful for her. For the mother who felt 1,000,000 miles away. He didn't tell Elena. He waited until the room was dark, save for the thin streetlight filtering through the window. He sat on the floor, his back against the cold wall. He took the soap and the knife. And he began to carve. It wasn't like carving wood. The soap yielded easily, almost too easily. It flaked and crumbled. He wasn't crafting a masterpiece. He was engaged in an act of sheer, stubborn devotion. Each curl of soap that fell to the floor felt like a fragment of his worry, his fear, his anger being shaved away. He carved for hours, lost in a trance of focus. The shape emerged slowly from the rectangle. The gentle slope of a mantle over a head. The suggestion of folded hands. He used the nail file to try and shape a face, but it was too delicate. The features remained suggestion, a ghost of a countenance. By the time the first gray light of dawn touched the window, he had a crude, small figurine, no taller than his thumb. It was unmistakably a Marian figure, though primitive, born more of feeling than technique. He placed it on the windowsill. The weak morning light shone through it, making it glow faintly. It looked fragile, ephemeral, like hope itself. He went to his day labor, exhausted but with a strange, quiet peace in his heart. He had done something. When he returned that evening, something small but significant had happened. Elena had found the statue. She hadn't said anything, but she had placed a scrap of blue cloth, torn from an old dress, beneath it. A humble pedestal. She met his eyes and gave him the faintest smile, the first he'd seen in months. Lucia, propped up on pillows, pointed a thin finger at it. "Pretty," she whispered. That tiny, soap Madonna became the focal point of their diminished world. They would pray the rosary in the evening, their eyes fixed on its soft white form. It was a testament to their yes, to their acceptance of a reality they did not understand. Matteo began to feel a shift. Not in his circumstances, those remained dire, but within himself. The frozen core of his faith began to thaw. His prayers were no longer stones of demand, "Please fix this," but whispers of surrender. "We are here. We are yours. Help us to trust." A week after he carved the statue, something happened. Matteo was at a construction site, hauling bricks. The foreman, a gruff man named Silas, saw the calluses and scars on Matteo's hands. "You didn't get those from this work," he said. "I was a wood carver," Matteo replied without expecting anything. Silas grunted. "My church," he said. "The one over in the next district. Our old statue of the Virgin, vandalized. Terrible thing. We've been collecting donations for a new one for months, but a proper carved one. It's thousands we don't have." The pastor's heartbroken. Matteo felt a jolt, like a tuning fork struck in his chest. He didn't have a workshop. He didn't have tools. He didn't have wood. But he heard himself say, "I could. I could look at it. Maybe I could repair it. Silas shrugged, skeptical. Can't make it worse. I'll take you after shift. The church was a beautiful, older building. The vandalized statue was a mid-century piece, the Virgin's hands and face brutally smashed. The pastor, Father Anselm, a man with eyes of profound sadness, showed it to him. She was the heart of our parish, he said softly. Matteo examined the damage. It was severe but not irreparable. The core structure was sound. I can fix this, Matteo said, his carver's mind coming alive, assessing grain, joinery, replacement parts. But I need tools. And specific wood. Father Anselm's face was a mask of resignation. We have the donation fund. It's only a few hundred. Then Matteo had an idea, born of pure, impractical faith. What if, he said, I repair her here, in the church, where people can see? Maybe they will be inspired to give if they see the work being done. See her being restored. It was a gamble. Father Anselm agreed, moved by the desperate conviction in Matteo's eyes. Matteo used the small donation fund to buy the most basic set of chisels and a block of limewood for the new hands and face. He set up a temporary workspace in a side chapel. He began his work, his prayers now mingling with the sound of mallet on chisel. Parishioners would stop and watch. They saw a thin, tired man, pouring not just skill, but visible love into every cut. The story of the carver who had lost everything began to circulate. A woman left an extra set of gouges on his bench. An old man donated a beautiful piece of seasoned cherrywood for the face, saying he'd been saving it for years, waiting for the right purpose. And as Matteo carved the new face of the Virgin, he found himself thinking not of grand iconography, but of the simple, loving features he had tried and failed to capture in soap. The gentle inward gaze, the lips poised between a smile and a word of comfort. He worked slowly, reverently. The parish donations began to increase, coin by coin, bill by bill. But more than that, a community was forming around this act of restoration. Meanwhile, back in the boarding house, a different kind of miracle was unfolding. Lucia's condition had not improved. One particularly bad night, her breathing became dangerously shallow. Elena, frantic, was preparing to run for help. As she passed the windowsill, the streetlight caught the little soap Madonna. In a moment of sheer, gut-wrenching plea, Elena grabbed the figurine. She didn't know what she was doing. She pressed it into Lucia's small, feverish hand, closing the child's fingers around it. "Hold on to her, mi vida," she sobbed. "Hold on to our mother." She raced out to find a phone to call an ambulance. When she returned minutes later, breathless and terrified, she found Lucia sleeping. Not the fitful, wheezing sleep of illness, but a deep, peaceful, quiet sleep. The terrible rattle in her chest was gone. Her breathing was even. The fever, when Elena touched her forehead, had broken. Clutched in Lucia's hand, the soap statue was warm, and slightly melted from the heat of her skin, the features even softer now, as if blurred by a loving touch. When the paramedics arrived, they were perplexed but confirmed the child's vital signs were stabilizing. "Sometimes," one said, "these things just break." Elena knew it was no mere coincidence. She looked at the humble melting soap in her daughter's hand and felt a certainty as solid as granite flood her being. She was here. The story should end here, with the statue repaired and the child healed. A beautiful double miracle. But God's justice and Our Lady's intercession often work in deeper, more intricate ways. You see, the fire that had destroyed Matteo's workshop was never properly investigated. It was written off as an accident. But the truth was a serpent sleeping in the grass. A man named Karl, who owned a large furniture factory on the edge of town, had long coveted Matteo's prime workshop location for expansion. Matteo had refused every offer to sell. Karl was a man of cold calculation and no scruples. He had hired a disreputable electrician to ensure a fault would occur. He had also ensured the insurance agent who sold Matteo his policy was a friend, who crafted it to be nearly worthless. Karl watched Matteo's fall with satisfaction, waiting to scoop up the land at a bankruptcy auction for a pittance. Now, Karl was not a parishioner at Father Anselm's church. But his wife, Isabella, was. A quiet, deeply devout woman who had long turned a blind eye to her husband's ruthless business practices, praying for his soul in secret. She came to the church one afternoon to pray, drawn by the talk of the restoration. She saw Matteo at work. She saw the intense, sacred focus on his face. She didn't recognize him at first, just a poor artisan. But she overheard two older women talking. "It's a shame what happened to him. That fire so suspicious. And right after he wouldn't sell to that factory man." The name was mentioned. Karl. Her husband. Isabella felt the world drop out from under her. The pieces clicked into a horrifying picture. Her husband's vague comments about clearing obstacles. His lack of surprise at the fire. Her prayers, which had always been for his conversion, now took on a new, urgent dimension. For justice, for truth. Torn apart, Isabella went to the one place she felt she could. The side chapel, before the slowly being restored Virgin. She wept. She prayed for guidance. As she prayed, her eyes fell on a small, simple votive offering left at the base of the scaffolding. It was a tiny, crudely carved soap Madonna, placed there by Matteo as a marker of where his journey began. It was melting slightly in the candle's warmth. In that melting, humble form, Isabella saw the profound humility of truth. It might be softened by time, blurred by fear, but its essence remained. It would not hold its shape forever. It had to be acted upon. That night she confronted Karl. Not with anger, but with a terrifying calm. She told him what she knew, what she had deduced. She told him about the carver, about his sick child, about the melting soap Madonna that had sparked her realization. "You will make this right," she said, her voice steady. "Or I will go to the authorities with my suspicions, and I will leave you. My soul cannot live with this anymore." Karl, faced with the collapse of both his marriage and his liberty, crumbled. The facade of the powerful businessman broke. Guilt, long suppressed, rose like a flood. The following Sunday, at the end of Mass, Father Anselm made an unexpected announcement. He said an anonymous benefactor, moved by the story of the restoration and seeking to atone for past wrongs, had come forward. This benefactor was funding not only the complete restoration of the statue, but was also providing for the full medical care of the carver's daughter. Furthermore, this benefactor was donating a sum to establish a small workshop and apprenticeship program for skilled craftsmen who had fallen on hard times. The first beneficiary, Father Anselm said, would be our own Matteo, who had shown us all the meaning of faithful perseverance. Matteo and Elena sat in the pew stunned. Lucia, healthier and brighter each day, played with the now much melted soap statue in her hands. It was only when they were approached after Mass by a pale, elegant woman, Isabella, who clasped their hands and could not speak for her tears, that they began to understand the full, miraculous scope of what had occurred. Justice, like a slow, deep river, had finally found its course. The restored statue of the Virgin was unveiled on the Feast of the Immaculate Conception. It was breathtaking. But for Matteo, the true centerpiece of the ceremony was in his pocket. Small box. Inside, nestled on a piece of blue velvet, was what remained of the soap Madonna. It was now just an amorphous, smooth lump, barely recognizable. It had given its entire substance, melted away almost to nothing, in an act of intercession. It was no longer a carving. It was a relic of a prayer answered in triplicate. Healing for a child, restoration for a craftsman, and justice for the wronged. So what happened when a man carved a Virgin Mary statue out of soap? The expected thing would be for it to crumble, to be washed away, to be forgotten. What happened instead was a testament to a truth we so often forget. Our Lady does not look at the grandeur of our offering. She looks at the love with which it is given. She looks at the faith, however frayed, that it represents. Matteo offered his desperation, his last shred of skill, on an altar of soap. And she took that humble, melting gift and used it as a key. Key to unlock healing for Lucia. A key to unlock purpose and provision for Matteo. And in a twist only divine mercy could orchestrate, she used it to melt the hardened heart of Isabella, and through her, to confront the conscience of a wicked man, unlocking justice and restitution. The soap is gone now, fully dissolved into grace. But its legacy remains. A beautiful statue in a church, a thriving small workshop, a healthy little girl, and a family whose faith was refined in the fire of loss and emerged, not shattered but unbreakable. This story is a reminder. When you are in your own dark room, when all you have left is the equivalent of a bar of soap, something seemingly worthless, fragile, inadequate, that is the very moment to begin carving your prayer. To act in faith, however small the act may seem. 'Cause she is there. In the crumbling, in the melting, in the quiet persistence of love. She takes our fragile offerings and weaves them into miracles we could never have designed for ourselves. If this story resonated with you, if it touched a place in your heart that knows struggle but clings to faith, then I invite you to become part of our community here. Subscribe to this channel and ring that notification bell. By doing so, you're not just watching a video. You're joining a family of believers who seek and share these stories of light. We have so many more accounts of hope and intercession to explore together. And if you feel moved, share this video. Share it with a friend who is facing their own impossible situation, who feels their prayers are melting away before they can be heard. Give them this story as a testament that Our Lady's love is an active, creative, and justice-bringing force. Handshake. We also have a beautiful, growing community on WhatsApp and Telegram where we share daily prayers, inspirations, and support. It's a true digital sanctuary. The links to join are in the description below. Come and build this community of faith with us, and receive the blessings that come from shared devotion. Now I'd love to hear from you. In the comments after you've written hope and your city, tell me about a moment in your own life, big or small, where you felt an unexpected grace, a touch of the divine, an answer that came in a way you never anticipated. Your testimony might be the very thing that gives another viewer the strength to keep carving their soap, to keep holding on. Remember, no offering is too small. No prayer is too fragile. Do faith. Keep carving. She is listening. Until next time, may you be held in the mantle of her love, and may your hope, like that simple soap, Be transformed into something everlasting. God bless you.